Your life has just changed, and everybody around you is just completely oblivious to this fact. In my very own experience, the feeling of grieving after finishing a video game does fit the Kubler-Ross model in some ways. The whole process actually got me thinking of the stages of grief, which is generally associated, or the idea of impending death, and how this model could possibly be applied to various other happenings in life. In this case, the non-serious activity of finishing a really good video game. In fact, to me, the process very much goes like this. Denial. This often happens that very moment you see the credits rolling across the screen. The game could have taken you months to finish or a couple of hours to finish. The main thing is really that you can't believe it, that you actually finished it. Sometimes for different reasons, but hey, we'll get to that. Basically, the initial shock of actually coming to the end of something that may have taken so much time in your life is generally quite overwhelming. You may have been on the hype train for the game for months and spent all your possible free time playing it when it finally came out. In addition to constantly thinking about it, when you could have been doing some real-world tasks that required your full attention. The real thing here is that you finished the game and you're just having a hard time accepting that you did, unfortunately. In my experience, anger is a stage that doesn't always occur. Whether it occurs or not really is dependent on your experience with the game in question. Earlier I mentioned that gamers enter the denial stage for different reasons. For example, you may have bought a new linear game at the price an average AAA game goes for nowadays, only to finish it in 6 hours. While the debate of whether hours of fun should be tied to the price of a game is a debate for another day, there is no denying that some people will be pretty damn annoyed at such a situation. I've experienced it myself, and it's not fun, especially if you didn't particularly enjoy the game. I'm looking at you, Cyberpunk. Video game bargaining. This is the sad stage of wishing you could go back in time so you could experience the game for the very first time again. You want to go through the trials and tribulations that made playing the game so much fun without the knowledge of knowing what's coming. Sometimes, this can be amended with significant downloadable content packs or expansions. When The Witcher 3's Blood and Wine expansion was first released, this satiated my need to play the game for a couple of more hours, but it did eventually come to an end like I knew it would, and I was back to wishing the game had more content coming along in future. Overall, bargaining is just about either wishing that the game was longer or that they'll add more post-release content to it that extends your overall gameplay experience. Depression. This is when all really starts to hit you that the game is finished and there's nothing you can do about it. You can play it again, but it won't be the same as the first journey through it. Key plot twists, gameplay sequences, and feelings of triumph will be known to you, and thus you won't feel the same way playing through the game again. You finished it, and it has changed you in ways that you never thought possible when you first started with it. And now, you're just going to have to deal with the fact that you will never be able to relive the same journey in the same way ever again. Man, that's depressing. Finally, you begin to accept the fact that you finished a really great game, or sometimes a game that just wasn't all that long. You begin to realize that you will never experience this title for the first time again, but that's fine because the experience you had was totally worth it. The primary action involved in this phase is looking for a new game to play. While it may take you some time to get fully into it due to the hangover associated with the previous title, eventually you will, and you will finally begin moving on. And then the cycle will inevitably begin again. Such is the life of a gamer. I went on a real emotional roller coaster when I played The Last of Us. Whilst it's a lot better than a lot of other games, I still feel that Naughty Dog are rarely as good at emotion as they or some others might think they are. Is post-game depression common among gamers? Yes. Post-game depression is real, and there are various ways to cope with it. Caring about the disappearance or demise of a fictional character is actually quite normal now. Post-game depression can last weeks or months, but there are some ways to make it less painful. If you're not yet familiar with the term post-game depression, it's an unfortunate experience that most people who are into video games suffer at some point in time. The process is usually similar for players. You begin a game and then, after a while, find that you're completely immersed in it. Whether you've grown attached to the new world, the characters, the gameplay, or a combination, Your thoughts are consumed by the game, and everything else pales in comparison. Whether you drop 50 or 1,000 hours into it, when it comes time to let the game go, we find ourselves feeling empty and lost. This feeling is post-game depression, and it's not a joke. The last time I experienced post-game depression was earlier this year when I realized that there was nothing left for me to complete in Nier Automata. I remember talking to my friend about how everything felt so empty for me. I couldn't even become slightly entertained by another game, and I couldn't find interest in other hobbies either. She couldn't wrap her head around what I was explaining, as she made comments about how it was just a game and that I could just play a different one. What some people don't realize is that certain games can legitimately become second homes. The characters felt like real people to me, and I missed being around them. The forest itself also felt like a virtual home. I was in love with the environment. Nier Automata became the sole part of my life that brought me the most joy and the most comfort. Letting it go felt like letting go of a piece of myself. Because so many people experience post-game depression that can affect their lives for weeks or even months. I wanted to share some ideas for how to cope with it. There unfortunately isn't a one-size-fits-all solution, but you might find that some of these can help ease the transition between games. One of the more obvious ways to deal with post-game depression is to try to cut it short as quickly as possible by starting another game. I didn't find this worked well for me, but others have found success in attempting to not give the depression the room to grow. Even if playing another game feels like a chore in comparison to the last one you've gotten so attached to, forcing yourself into it would eliminate time to focus on your past game. If you're lucky, the new one will be good enough that after a few forced sessions, you'll start to get drawn to it. The other more obvious strategy for dealing with post-game depression is to play the game again, just in a different way. This has been suggested to me quite a few times. Though I generally don't put down games I love until I've played them pretty thoroughly to begin with. But for many games, such as Skyrim for example, there are numerous different ways to play them. Considering the numerous build possibilities, though we all know that you'll probably go in with a new build idea, but then fall back into your old play patterns after 5 hours or so anyway, trying to get every last drop out of a game would at least up your chances of feeling more ready to let it go by the time you've played through again. One tactic that worked for me was diving headfirst into fanfiction. I'm not going to claim that this would work for every game out there, but it definitely isn't limited to JRPGs. Seriously, if you haven't looked before, you should see how many different games have all sorts of fanfiction based on them. Whether it's writing, drawing, or other forms of art, you can take a crack at putting together your own content within the universe of your chosen game. Doing this prolongs the experience you got from playing it, and since there is technically no end to the fanfiction you create, you can keep creating content until you feel the passion start to fade, making the transition to a new game much easier. I definitely am not speaking from experience after writing my own 2B9S romance story or anything. I suffered from post-game depression quite a bit earlier in life as well, after completing GTA 5. And though I've completely forgotten most of it by now, what really helped me deal with this at the time was reading all about the lore. If you have completed any game but don't want to let go, don't be afraid to start learning about everything you missed, because I guarantee that no matter which game, there will be plenty of it. It's not just restricted to lore either. You can go searching for all kinds of interviews online as well, opening the door to even more beloved content to take in. One of the most helpful tools that I've found for dealing with post-game depression is connecting with other people who either are or have been just as attached to the game that you're struggling to let go of. Subreddits for different games are a great example for connecting with the right kind of people, though there are plenty of different discussion forums online. No need to let go when the discussion surrounding the game is still active. Now I know a lot of us probably suffer from depression already, but am I the only one that gets it after beating an amazing game? At least with Nier Automata, I'm jumping headfirst into the world, so I have a duckload of more content to dive into, so that helps. The worst depression came after Need for Speed Heat, which I loved maybe a little more than Nier Automata, but it's close. After that game, there was just nothing I could play. That game left me feeling down once I beat it for like a month because I just wanted more. The Witcher 3 did the same thing, so it's not only JRPGs, but just well-written games. When you connect with characters over the course of 40 to 150 hours, it really does feel depressing knowing you won't see them again for a while unless you replay the game. But who's got time for that? I'm not talking about a full-blown depression attack where I can't leave bed or eat, but more like emptiness for a little while. It's all you think about, but you're sad when you think about it because it's over. A lot of emptiness in your stomach and that kind of stuff. So it sounds a bit weird to say, but there is somewhat of a grieving process that comes with finishing a really good game, especially if you spend quite a bit of time playing it. You'll start the game and get so wrapped up in it that you'll spend much of your free time playing it that when you finish it, you're unsure of what to do with your life. It seems that most avid gamers go through this grieving process at least a few times in their life after finishing one of their favorite games of all time. I know that just thinking off the top of my head that I was lost and somewhat sad after finishing Call of Duty Black Ops and its expansions, after defeating the legendary villain in Far Cry 3, and more recently, after finishing Doom and each of its available expansions. First, find a friend who has played or watched the same game, anime, or movie that you have watched, that you have played. Have a compact group of friends who are multidimensional, who has experienced the same thing, which, believe me, this helps. If it is something popular, you're bound to find memes about it online. Believe me, memes on these things do help. They make you laugh and still make you feel connected to the thing when it's all over. The emptiness, believe me, never goes away until and unless we let the shows just be a tiny part of our already amazing lives. Let the TV shows and games be a stimulant which piques our interest, compels us to think, provides entertainment when we need it, and nothing more. The emptiness will definitely vanish if you go out, meet new people, or take up a spinning class, learn an instrument, maybe a new language, paint, or write, or sing, learn to cook, or dance, or travel, or read, or run free. Let your imagination run wild. There are innumerable things out there waiting for you. You just have to shut down the PC and turn off the TV. Let loose of the hold these virtual, magical, visual beings have on your lives. Stop falling prey to the incredibly luring, engaging, and amazing, but at the same time, vicious, destructive, and addictive realm of TV shows, games, and movies. Have you ever experienced post-game depression? Which games were you sad about finishing? Please share in the comments down below. Thank you for watching. Like this video if you liked it. My name is Sai, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!